I learned early that love, real love, is loud. It announces itself in the way someone says your name when they think you're asleep, in the way they fold your shirts even when you didn't ask, in the way they forgive you before you've properly apologized. She loved me like that, with no mute button, no off switch, and I understood almost immediately that I could live very comfortably inside the noise she made. When I tell myself this story, I start at the beginning, because beginnings are where justifications feel cleanest. I tell myself I didn't set out to use her. I tell myself I was tired, that I had been drifting for years, that I deserved something soft after so much uncertainty. The truth, if I'm honest in a way I rarely allow myself to be, is that I recognized her usefulness the same way a thirsty man recognizes water. Instinctively, without romance, without guilt, at least not at first. She was sitting across from me at a friend's apartment, knees tucked up under her, listening to me talk about a job I hated but pretended to be ambitious about. She listened as if every word mattered, as if my frustrations were a language she had studied. When I paused, she leaned forward slightly, eyes bright, and said, "That sounds really hard. But you're good at things like that. I can tell." It was a small sentence, unremarkable to anyone else, but I felt something click into place. Not affection, alignment. I learned her rhythms quickly. How she worried when people were late, how she apologized for things that weren't her fault, how she lit up when someone chose her. I learned that she had loved before and been left, that she believed love was something you proved by staying. I learned that if I stayed, or even implied that I might, she would give more. Time, patience, money when I needed it, forgiveness when I deserved none. She didn't call it giving. She called it building something together. The first time I needed her, really needed her, was when my car broke down and I couldn't afford the repair. I told her the truth, mostly, leaving out the part where I'd spent the money I should have saved on a weekend I didn't want to explain. She didn't hesitate. She transferred the money that evening, adding a heart emoji and a message that said, "We're a team." I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. Team implied equality, shared purpose. I let her believe it because correcting her would have cost me more than lying. I became good at calibrating myself to her expectations. I knew when to be distant enough to keep her anxious and when to be tender enough to reassure her. I learned that unpredictability kept her attentive, but cruelty scared her, so I walked a careful line. When she cried, I held her. When she asked where we were going, I spoke in soft abstractions. I see a future. I'm just scared because this matters. I don't want to rush something real. She mistook my evasions for depth. I let her. Sometimes, late at night, when she was asleep with her hand on my chest like an anchor, I would feel something like remorse. Not enough to change, but enough to make me shift uncomfortably. I would tell myself that I was giving her something too. Companionship, intimacy, the feeling of being chosen. I would tell myself that love didn't have to be symmetrical to be valid. People take different shapes, I think, fitting into each other's needs. Hers happened to be bigger. She talked about the future constantly. Not in a demanding way, but in a hopeful one that made it worse. She pointed out apartments she liked, asked my opinion on names she'd always loved, wondered aloud what kind of dog we'd get if we ever had a yard. I nodded, smiled, kissed her forehead. I learned to answer without committing, to mirror her dreams just enough that she could see us inside them without holding me accountable for building them. She trusted me to catch her if she leaned too far forward. I made sure she never quite fell. The benefits accumulated quietly. She introduced me to people who helped my career, vouched for me when I didn't deserve it. She covered rent when my freelance work dried up, insisting it was temporary, that she believed in me. She believed in me with a fervor I had never earned. I let her belief substitute for my effort. When she asked if I was happy, I said yes, because unhappy men leave, and I wasn't ready to give up what she offered. There were moments when she looked at me differently, when her questions sharpened, when she noticed the way my stories shifted depending on the audience. Once, after I canceled plans for the third time in a week, she asked me if I still wanted this. The way she said this was careful, as if she were handling glass. I saw the risk in her eyes, the way she was bracing for a truth she didn't want. I reached for her hands, told her I was overwhelmed, that I was afraid of failing her. It was close enough to the truth that it sounded sincere. She apologized for doubting me. I let her. I told myself that I wasn't lying, not exactly. I did care about her, in my way. I enjoyed her laughter, the way she made coffee, the way she defended me to her friends. I just didn't care enough to stop benefiting from her. I didn't love her in the way she loved me, but I told myself love was a spectrum, that movies had ruined people's expectations. If she was willing to accept what I gave, who was I to deny her? Still, the tension grew, a low hum beneath our days. She started asking for more clarity, more presence. She wanted me to meet her parents. She wanted to make plans that extended beyond the next few months. Each request felt like a tightening net. I responded by giving just enough to keep her hopeful. I met her mother once, charmed her effortlessly, watched pride bloom on my girlfriend's face. Later, alone, she asked me if it meant something. I said it did. I didn't specify what. There were nights when I lay awake imagining discovery. Not in dramatic terms, but in small, devastating realizations. Her finding a message I forgot to delete, noticing a pattern I couldn't explain away, finally asking a question I couldn't dodge. The idea didn't terrify me as much as it should have. Part of me was curious about what would happen if the truth surfaced, as if I were watching a slow experiment and waiting for the reaction. The truth, which I never spoke aloud, was that I had already decided how this would end. I just hadn't decided when. As long as she remained useful, as long as the balance tipped in my favor, I stayed. I told myself that everyone is selfish in relationships, that I was simply more honest with myself about it. I told myself she would be okay eventually, that she was strong, that heartbreak was survivable. I told myself many things to make it possible to wake up next to her and accept her love without returning it. The night everything shifted was unremarkable at first. We were eating dinner, something she had cooked, something she asked me to rate like she always did. I told her it was great. She watched me carefully, then asked, "Do you ever feel like I love you more than you love me?" The question landed softly, but it split something open inside me. I could have lied easily. I was practiced. Instead, I hesitated, just long enough. She noticed. Of course she did. Love had made her an expert in me. Her face didn't crumble immediately. She nodded, as if confirming a theory, and said quietly, "I think I've been pretending not to see it." My chest tightened, not with guilt, but with the realization that my control was slipping. She wasn't accusing me. She wasn't angry. She was grieving, and that was more dangerous. I reached for the familiar tools. Reassurance, ambiguity, promises that weren't promises, but she gently pulled her hand away. "I just need to know," she said, "if you're here because you want to be, or because it's easy." The room felt smaller. For the first time, the benefits I'd been collecting felt heavy, like evidence laid out on a table. I could still salvage it. I knew that. A well-placed confession of fear, a declaration of love delayed but real, and she would stay. She wanted to believe. She had always wanted to believe. The power was still there, trembling but intact. What surprised me was the exhaustion I felt at the thought of using it again. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just what she gave me, but what she had given up waiting for me to become someone else. I saw the cost I had ignored because it wasn't mine to pay. For a moment, the justifications fell silent, and in that quiet I understood the full shape of what I had done. When I finally spoke, the words I chose would determine everything. Whether I continued as I was, taking until there was nothing left, or whether I ended it and faced the loss of everything her love had built for me. She watched me with that same unwavering affection, even now, even after the question had been asked. She was still hoping, and in that suspended moment, with all my thoughts laid bare to myself for the first time, I realized that whatever I said next would not just decide our future, but define who I was willing to be once there was nothing left to take.